Hello, everyone. I'm here today again with Anthony Georgievich of Techspedient and Chris Hummel. Chris was introduced to me by Anthony, and I thought it would be a great idea for Chris to tell us her story about using Anthony's services and how she came to get to know Anthony. Hi, Chris. How are you? Tell me a little about yourself.
Well, I've been in dentistry for approximately 25 years. I do manage my husband's practice as well as I am an assistant. We've been in the same location for 21 years. My husband actually graduated from the University of Maryland Dental School, and we live 6 miles from our office.
Awesome. Anthony, I know you provide cybersecurity services, but you also come in at times to clean up, right? When somebody's breached, you come in and you help them comply because there are a lot of rules and regulations that dentists need to follow when a breach happens. Whether or not you've done your job or not, you still are obligated. The reporting rule, as I call it. We got HIPAA and privacy rules, we got OSHA rules, but this is a reporting rule that we need to comply. Can you tell me a little about that?
Some of that stuff is out of scope for what we do. So that's where like a Debbie Carr comes in. She comes in to work with the insurance company if it's cyber liability insurance is involved, if they need forensics performed, which is highly recommended when there's a breach or a ransomware attack, only because you want to make sure that the data wasn't or was exfiltrated so that you can appropriately notify your patients if there was data exfiltration. But yeah, some of that is out of scope for what we do. We kind of come in once forensics is done. We then clean up the server, we clean up the workstations. It's like pretty much a redo of the network at that point.
So if I hire a Techspedient and I'm breached, I understand that you don't do a lot of the forensics and all of the official stuff, but you do know the people to bring in to accommodate them, such as our friend Debbie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely have the connections to bring in the people that are needed for something like that.
Yeah, and that's but my whole point, that you become the IT department of a dental office, and if a problem happens, they come to you. You don't necessarily at that point try to do everything yourself. You bring the specialist that the government requires to have and do the things they're supposed to. Chris, can you tell me a little about your story of what happened to you guys and why it's so interesting for us to hear you?
Well, it was April 1st of 2020, and we were closed for COVID and only seeing emergencies. And I went in on a Saturday to prepare for the Monday emergencies that we were going to see that day. And there was this strange message on my computer screen. Went to a couple of different computers and it was all the same. And after trying to contact our people at the time, I finally got in touch with him because I had his cell phone. And he told me that we were breached, or that we had a cyber attack, and that was ransom on our computer. And I wasn't quite sure I understood even what that meant. That was like way out in left field for me. I've never even dealt with a cyber attack or even really heard of them until that point. And I went into a peer group that I belonged to and just typed that I need help. And someone recommended Debbie Carr, DK Carr and Associates. So that's who I called. But basically they came in and they seized everything. It was an incident, not actually a breach. They seized all of our computers, deleted everything. And the original ransom was $175,000 that they were asking for. And Debbie put us in contact with Anthony, and Anthony came in, and we basically had to start from ground zero.
So when she says incident or a breach, does that mean that they took the data?
They did not. So it was a drive-by ransomware, luckily, so they weren't able to access. There's two types of ransomware. It's drive-by, where they just lock your files. They want to just hit and get the payment. And then there's the other ones that are double extortion. They say basically, look, you either pay the ransom or we're going to publish your data. And then also, once you do pay the ransom, they may come back and say, we still have your data. You need to pay us again if you want us to keep the data or delete the data so that it's not published or sold.
Right. Okay. And what software were you using, Chris?
EagleSoft. The company that we previously had before Techspedient, we found them through our state dental association. We went to our Maryland State Dental Association and looked to see who they endorsed or sponsored. And there's so many things that I wish I would have known then what I know now. For example, vetting my own IT company. Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Are they doing risk analysis on their own computers and making sure they're compliant? So the hackers went to Maryland State Dental Association, got who they were sponsoring, went to their server, and they were doing nothing they were supposed to be doing. Absolutely nothing. I wish that I would have vetted them more than I did. I would have learned that they were already selling their business. They were filing bankruptcy. They were behind in their taxes. There's so much information that I found out after the fact. But the hackers went to their system, which was so easy to get into. And I believe they were servicing 175 dentists, including the Maryland State Dental Association. They were hacked during this time as well, and reached out to all of their clients' servers. And so we were not the primary target. We got targeted by going through them.
I'm going to take a minute here to talk about my political activities, dental politics, is that the dental societies and the American Dental Association have an obligation to make sure whomever they're endorsing is doing what they're supposed to. This is not the first incident that has happened. A dental association recommending a vendor and the vendor not doing what they're supposed to. They need to pay attention. It's not enough to take advertising money and just put their logo on the website. So it seems like you guys were not breached, but I'm sure there were others who paid ransom through those attacks. Did you hear anything about that?
I did hear, I think Anthony has more information on that, but we did end up paying the ransom, which was against the advice. The process, I want to be very clear that everybody should have a disaster plan in motion or something to start following steps, because I felt like a deer caught in a headlight. I didn't know what to do, where to go. Now I do. But Debbie Carr is the one that handheld us through every aspect. She hired the attorneys for me. She found IT companies for me to interview. She contacted the FBI. She contacted the insurance companies. She did everything. Her and Anthony together were even doing the negotiations or talking with the people that did the negotiations for the ransom. But we did pay the ransom. We did.
That's why, like, when I walk into practices and they have the backup solution connected directly to the server, I can't help but laugh and shake my head, because once that server is compromised, that backup's compromised because you've got direct connection, right? That's why we isolate things. Even the function of actually doing the backup is a separate computer with completely different credentials. And the backup storage local is completely different. It's disconnected from the actual production server.
But Anthony, you and I have talked about this many times. If you do preventative measures like multi-factor authentication, right? That makes passwords irrelevant. You can use whatever password you want. Backups are great, right? But these ransomware people are very smart. They will sit on a breach and wait until they infect everything. And then you need to go back. Oh my God, which backup is still good and which one is not? Did my IT keep historical data? When did they dump it? Is it only 30 days? They may wait 6 months before they lock you up, right?
Yep. And what's funny, I see on the Facebook groups, there's questions, how are you backing your stuff up? And then there's people that they're just rotating drives every day. And I'm like, okay, so if your server gets compromised, those hackers, they know that you're rotating drives. What do you think they're going to do? You think they're going to just ransom you right away? No, they're going to wait until all your drives are being rotated, and then they're going to deploy it, and they'll even delay the deployment, and they could even add malicious code to that connected drive and delay that getting locked up, right? So they could say, you know what, a month out, I'm going to have that encrypted. 3 weeks out, I'll have this encrypted. Rotating drives like that is not a very good solution to a backup.
many people listening to this may not even know what rotating drive means. Their IT may be doing it for them to save money. The message here is this. I know a few things about IT and computers and technology. I don't even venture into trying to do the cybersecurity myself, right? If you are laughing and saying, why would they need my data? Listen to Chris's story, right? You guys were not a multi-office location. You were just a dental office, just like the rest of us. Chris?
Correct.
Yeah. And they'll come. It's a source of income for many. And if you think they're in Russia or China or a third world country, think again. Somebody in their basement in New Jersey may be doing it, or someone in Nebraska. Some kids are learned how to do it. It's widely available for you to learn how to do this.
Oh, yeah. They have affiliate programs. It's like, hey, we'll give you 50% of the revenue from the ransomware that you deploy and execute.
Anthony is trying to say is that the people who wrote this software don't even do it themselves. They have an army of people who attack businesses doing anywhere from $500,000 to $500 million, you know, and they work on affiliate deals. But Chris, I really want to thank you for being here. What is your advice? I'm sure a lot of dentists are listening to this and some office managers. I want to know what your advice is.
My advice is to make sure you know what your IT company is doing for you. Make sure that they are getting the appropriate risk analysis and that you're involved in everything. The other advice is, and I can't stress this enough, is to make sure you have somebody like Debbie Carr. I know there's a couple of different names out there, companies that do this, but we now have annual risk analysis. And Debbie is in our office physically for 3 days every year. Anthony comes on one of the days too. And our computers are sifted through. They know everything that's going in and out of our computers. And it's just so important.
Yeah. And for people who don't know Debbie is a friend of ours, Anthony's friend and my friend, and Debbie is in HIPAA compliancy business. And if anybody needs to get a hold of her, they can contact me and I'll make a referral.
She keeps the IT provider like honest. I hear stories from her where IT will push back on when she comes in. They're like fighting her. I'm the opposite. I'm like, you know what, Debbie, come in. I wish she could do it for all my clients. So I'd rather have that different set of eyeballs looking at my clients' networks to make sure that we've got things buttoned up and we're doing right by the client.
It took me almost a year to get my HIPAA binder compliant, and having that disaster plan is the very first page of my binder now. If this were to ever happen again, I pray not, but if it were, now I know exactly who I call first. I know in what order I need to do things. And obviously Anthony and Debbie are going to be my first contact. The other thing I can't stress enough is this ransom attack cost us $102,000. We did have a very small insurance that paid $50,000 of it. So out of my pocket was $52,000. We now have a $2 million policy that costs us about $1,300 a year, but it is money well spent. I think with cyber attacks, look what just happened with Change Healthcare. That indirectly affected us again. It's not anything that we could have used our insurance for, but it's important to have it because you never know when you're going to be in that situation.
Absolutely. Having a plan, at least having weekly meetings with your staff. I just posted something in the group regarding the fact that you can have the greatest IT, such as Anthony, in there, but if you don't train your staff, they can make or break a system. Awareness with the staff and the doctors is important, and I hope people are listening. It is the most important thing we have in our practice. It's not the drill, it's not the chair, it's our data. If you lose your data, you have no business. And that's my message to them. Hey, Anthony, do you have anything else to add at the end?
Yeah, I just wanted to stress the importance also of your IT should be doing vendor management. So for example, when there's a support request for any of your, like your practice management, imaging, your patient communication vendor, when they're coming into the server, you need to make sure that your IT is allowing them in and watching what they're doing, because a lot of times they will disable, internal security just to make their products work and they take the lazy way out, because at the end of the day, once they're out of the system, it's not their responsibility anymore as far as protecting it moving forward. And we do that for all of our clients, and then we'll work with the vendor to make sure that it's done right.
What Anthony is basically saying is, if you got a problem with your practice management software and you need to fix it, and you call them and they're inside of your server trying to fix it, the fix for them may be disabling Anthony's security because something is blocking them. So they just disable it for their software to work, and now you're at a risk. So you need to have your IT watching them coming in, going out, and asking questions if you're not familiar with it yourself. My rules, right? In the office: don't click,
Yes.
don't connect, don't plug. Those are my 3 rules for our computers, so for my staff, and we do it weekly. I want to thank both of you for being here today. I hope people take this message to their offices. You don't have to hire Anthony or Debbie. Just make sure you are secure. The reason for this is to make sure your small business survives something like this. And we know that it can be very harmful. Hopefully we can do this again, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.